D. Docs present Wonder Number 19, the complete story of Winnie the Pooh, how a bare very little brain conquered the entire world. Black, silence, then a gentle nostalgic breeze rushes through the pages of a wind-up storybook resting on a wooden nightstand, while a soft piano melody plays a waltz that sounds like childhood afternoons you almost forgot. Look, let us keep it real right out of the gate. When you think about Disney legends, you picture flying cockpits, glass slippers, and magical kingdoms built on fairy dust and fairy godmothers. But many cultural historians have argued that the most enduring, comforting intellectual property in the entire global empire did not come from some grand royal palace or a sweeping Broadway style fable. It came from a messy nursery floor in London, a damp English forest, a stuffed bear brought to Harrods, and a very real little boy named Christopher Robin. For decades, folks reduced the Hundred Acre Woods to a simple cartoon lunchbox brand or a collection of honey pots for toddlers, but over time, the real story revealed itself to be much deeper than just a few honey jars and talking animals. It is a massive generational epic spanning a century, crossing from page to screen to multi-billion-dollar global merchandise juggernaut, all while wrestling with the delicate art of holding on to childhood innocence in a world determined to grow you up too fast. And there is always more to the story. Prologue. The Hundred Acre Wood. Stories have always been among humanity's oldest companions. Long before there were corporate media conglomerates, streaming algorithms, or direct-to-video sequels, bedtime tales were whispered in the dark by parents trying to make sense of a complicated world for children who only wanted to know where the sun went at night. Sound and story travel through history, picking up the exact flavor, comfort, and gentle melancholy of the deep telling of them. Winnie the Pooh did not drop out of the sky as a plush marketing asset. He was built page by page, branch by branch, out of real human heartache, quiet observation, and the eternal desire to freeze time just long enough to play a game of poo sticks on a wooden bridge. Movement 1. From the nursery to the page. To understand how a stuffed bear took over the planet, we have to trace the root system back to the grey stone streets of London and the ash trees of Ashdown Forest. In 1914, a real black bear cub named Winnipeg was bought by a Canadian veterinarian named Harry Colburn at the train stop in White River, Ontario. Before being donated to the London Zoo, a little boy named Christopher Robin Milne fell completely in love with her, renaming his own stuffed Edward Bear after the zoo attraction and a swan he called Winnie the Pooh. Into the boy's father, Alan Alexander Milne. A. Milne was already a successful playwright and humorist for Punch magazine, but he was struggling to capture the elusive magic of his son's imaginative play, observing Christopher Robin and his collection of stuffed animals interacting in the nursery. Milne began writing down poetry and short stories that treated a silly old bear, a nervous piglet, and a gloomy donkey not as simple caricatures, but as fully realized personalities with very distinct neurosis, and deep loyalty. When E.H. Shepard provided the iconic pen and ink illustration sketching them from the actual toys, something extraordinary happened. The books published in 1926 and 1928 did not just charm children over time. Many readers came to feel they particularly hypnotized adults, capturing the exact bittersweet feeling of watching childhood slip through your fingers like sand. Moment 2, the mouse acquires the bear. Then came the 1960s, and the literary charm of the Hundred Acre Woods collided with the corporate machinery of Walt Disney. For years, the rights surrounding the characters involved careful navigation and complex discussions before Walt Disney finally secured what he needed. Walt saw something unique in those soft, melancholy stories. Walt understood that American audiences needed a different kind of animation, not the frantic slapstick energy of standard cartoons, but something slower, warmer, and deeply comforting. The transition wasn't simple. Disney brought the motion picture rights, opting initially to create three distinct featurettes: Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree, Winnie the Pooh and the Bustlery Day, and Winnie the Pooh and the Tigger 2. And Tigger 2, rather than a single featurette film. The choice changed everything. Instead of rushing through the narrative, Disney gave the characters room to breathe, live inside the book pages, and interact with the narrator himself. Sterling Holloway provided the iconic warm honey voice for Pooh, while Paul Winchell brought boundless, rubber-legged chaos to Tigger. When those featurettes were eventually stitched together into the 1977 classic, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Disney had quietly birthed a masterpiece of cozy animation. Movement 3, the legal battlefield and licensing empire. While the classic featurettes were winning over family rooms, an entirely different kind of corporate drama was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. It was the birth of a colossal merchandising empire and a decades-long rights dispute that became legendary among entertainment lawyers and licensing executives. When A.A. Mills' widow Daphne sold certain U.S. film and merchandising rights to the Stephen Schlesinger Agency in the 1930s, and those rights were later licensed to Disney, it set off decades of complex royalty disputes and estate negotiations. The legal tug of war over who controlled the honey pot became a massive financial chess match across both sides of the Atlantic. As the brand expanded its universe through television series like The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh in the late 80s, bringing the residents of the Hundred Acre Wood straight into Saturday morning television lineups with Emmy-winning production values, the financial stakes skyrocketed. Bookstores, toy shops, and department stores stocked Pooh lunchboxes, baby blankets, ceramic figurines, and inspirational quote books. The bear was no longer just a character in a book. He was an international symbol of unconditional friendship and a billion-dollar corporate asset. Movement 5, beyond the nursery floor. While the television animation machines was busy keeping Pooh on screens worldwide, something fascinating happened in classrooms, lecture halls, and bookstores everywhere. Winnie the Pooh grew up. Scholars, philosophers, and psychologists began using the residents of the Hundred Acre Woods to explain complex ideas about human nature. Books like The Tao of Pooh used the bear's simple, unhurried perspectives to teach ancient Eastern philosophy to Western readers. Many parents, educators, and psychologists came to interpret each character as representing different psychological archetypes and emotional struggles, turning the Hundred Acre Woods into a gentle map of the human mind. This cultural pivot bypassed traditional children's entertainment gatekeepers, spreading directly through university campuses, self-help shelves, and timeless philosophical wisdom. Winnie the Pooh became a literary touchstone, proving that profound truths often come wrapped in a yellow bear with very little brain. Now, Movement 7. Technical and the digital shift. Behind every honeypot and storybook page, a massive industrial machine was adapting to relentless technological disruption. Think about how technology dictated how fans experienced the Hundred Acre Woods. In the early days, it was heavy cloth-bound volumes printed by local presses and read aloud by lamplight. Then came vinyl read-along LPs, cassette tapes passed around family cars on cross-country road trips, and VHS tapes sliding into living room VCRs. When the internet arrived, everything flipped. Digital streaming platforms, YouTube, retrospective essays, and ebook archives democratized access. A child sitting in a small rural town could stream the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh on a tablet with the exact same clarity as a kid sitting in a downtown Manhattan apartment. The physical Disney store aisles largely gave way to streaming queues and digital libraries, proving that the business of classic character IP was just as agile as any modern tech startup. Movement 8. Different storytelling languages. So why did the original Mills books and the Disney adaptations feel so fundamentally different? Because adaptation is culturally architecture. Look at the tone and the narrative approach. A hallmark of A. Mills' original text is its dry British wit, gentle irony, and poetic melancholy, where many readers interpret the narrator and the characters as sharing private jokes the adults appreciate just as much as the children. Disney's animated adaptation leaned into visual warmth, iconic musical numbers by the Sherman Brothers, bright primary colors, and straightforward emotional accessibility designed for family viewing across all cultures. One version feels like reading an illustrated letter by the fireplace in an English cottage on a rainy afternoon. The other feels like stepping into a vibrant animated storybook where every character has a distinct, memorable signature tone. Both are authentic, both are powerful. They are just speaking different dialects of the same comforting language. Now, movement 9, I do believe, global echoes. While British literature and American animation dominated global media charts, the traffic was never one way. Winnie the Pooh has always been a global conversation. Illustrations and translation in Europe, Latin America, Asia adopted Mills characters, infusing them with local linguistic nuances and cultural warmth. Pooh stories written in London or Burbank are routinely translated into dozens of languages, being read by millions of children and adults across the globe as a universal shorthand for kindness and simplicity. Simultaneously, global fan communities feed back into Western culture, introducing fresh artistic interpretations, collector markets, and philosophical analyses. The spirit of the Hundred Acre Woods is no longer tied to a single zip code, it belongs to the world. Movement 9. Again, yes, 9. Of course, whenever you mix children's literature and a multi-billion-dollar corporate machine, you get plenty of debate from inside the house. Believers across both literary purist and Disney fandom communities have spent decades asking tough questions. Has commercial saturation watered down the quiet, melancholy brilliance of Mills' original prose? Are modern adaptations performing for an audience of nostalgic adults of corporate balance sheets? Do slick corporate redesigns strip away the raw, authentic imperfections of E.H. Shepard's original pencil sketches? How do you balance artistic integrity with global merchandising rights? These are not petty complaints. They are serious, thoughtful conversations about commercializationism, copyrights, and the dangers of turning innocent childhood nostalgia into predictable commodity. Over time, the tension between the nursery floor and the corporate boardroom grew fierce as the brand became a global empire, and it keeps the community honest. Movement 11, the pursuit of faith, play, and sound. As we look toward the future, the rigid lines separating classic literature and modern digital media are dissolving entirely. Genre bending is the new normal. Multidisciplinary creators combine classic literary analyses with modern video essay formats. AI-assisted archiving preserves original manuscript drafts. Digital storytelling platforms platforms feature interactive storybooks right alongside high definition releasing streaming. Artists and dreamers alike continue to explore how simple stories bridge divides, holding to the relative comfort we find in childhood innocent points towards a shared human horizon. Now, movement 10. Styles change, platforms change, languages change, cultures change. But for a century, fans and dreamers have continued to do the same remarkable thing. They have remembered, sometimes though handwritten nursery poems, or through handwritten nursery poems, sometimes through pen and ink sketches, sometimes through vintage storybook records, sometimes through watercolor animation sales, sometimes through live action cinematic wonder, sometimes through digital streaming screens, different formats, the same bear a very little brain. I am D Moore, and remember, headlines fade, culture lasts, because there is always more to the story.